Good evening, graduates and Oak Hill family and friends. I have the distinct honor and privilege to introduce this year's valedictorian. I've had the joy of getting to know, teach, and coach Abigail these past 5 years. I've been able to watch her grow and blossom into such a strong and beautiful young woman. When thinking about introducing her this evening, my mind went in many different directions. I could spend ample time speaking about her many academic and athletic achievements, or all the ways that she's contributed to Oak Hill. However, I did want to try and be brief. Then I found myself getting really emotional at the thought of her leaving, and in order to stay composed up here, I thought I probably need to avoid the teary goodbye. So then I wanted to find a different way of honoring her tonight. And I was recently watching a show, The Office, which is a favorite amongst this year's graduating class. And if you aren't familiar, this show is a mockumentary about life in the American workplace. And the protagonist of the show is the office manager, Michael Scott. Michael, while awkward at times, has a way of endearing himself to those around him. In his final episode, he tries to say goodbye to each worker in their own unique way. For one employee, he says goodbye by writing him a letter of reference. This ending struck me with exactly how I wanted to introduce Abigail. So let me take my cue from him. To whom it may concern, the dictionary defines superlative as of the highest kind, quality, or order, surpassing all else or others, supreme. I define it as Abigail Manjuri. As a babysitter, student, athlete, sister, friend, and daughter, she is of the highest kind, quality, and order, supreme. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Oak Hill Classical School's 2020 valedictorian, Abigail Manjuri.
Hallelujah. I can't believe we made it either, in all honesty. I don't even know where to start. Okay, so before we left home to come here, we were walking out the door, and my dad, was over there, couldn't look at him, but he said to me, okay, so are you ready for your speech? And I said, yes, I think so. And he said, do you have your notes? And I said, no, because I thought that I could plan something out in my head and it would be okay and I would be composed. And he kind of looked at me for a second and he said, okay. And that let me know that I needed to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes furiously writing down all that I had in my head. So that's what I did. So when I was thinking about what I wanted to say, I wanted to steer away from the stereotypical idea that you need to thank everyone you know in your valedictorian speech. I wanted to really say something great and memorable, something deep. And I came to realize that that's not really the purpose of this. And so as I kept trying to write it, as I kept trying to come up with something great that I wanted to leave behind, what kept coming back to my mind, whether it was on my own or prompted from my loving father, was gratitude. And the fact that you can say thank you, and that can be a stereotypical idea, but we hardly ever sit and realize what it means to be thankful, to have gratitude. And so to say thank you, to make this speech one that is centered around gratitude, is not something I think is bad, and it's something that I'm going to try to do. So here we go. Back in 1994-95, my dad stumbled upon the world of classical education. He heard about Dorothy Sayers and Doug Wilson up in Moscow, Idaho, and the lost tools of learning. He was gripped by this idea that we are to pursue truth, goodness, and beauty in everything we do. He was gripped by the idea that education is not merely memorizing things, dates, and numbers, but your education really shapes your soul. It informs your habits, and it creates in you whatever person you will grow up to be. So my parents became together gripped by this idea, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Beatles, who I have the pleasure of calling Aunt Jill and Uncle Greg. And they were so gripped by this idea that they started a school because of it. Who does that? That doesn't make any sense. They said, yeah, we love this idea so much. This is what we want for our children, and so we're going to make it happen. And that's what they did. I grew up in this school. I started as Dominion Classical Christian Academy and now as Oak Hill Classical School. For 14 years, I've been saturated with classical education. It's really all I've ever known. But I've grown to love it. It's not something I hate in any way at all. I would even say that it's kind of been shoved down my throat, but I'm so glad that it was. I can't think of anything that I'm more grateful for other than the fact that it's what my parents have instilled in me since the day I was born. So in light of that, I did want to talk about my teachers and all the people that have been in the school community for so long and thank them. My mind first goes to how our teachers would train us to try and cultivate in us a love for lifelong learning. They would try to steer us away from grades, from that letter that you get back on the report card, and try to steer our hearts to really love and enjoy what we learn. I remember in 5th grade, in Miss McCaig's class, which she's a fantastic teacher, and everyone who's been her student knows that. I had a dream one night, and all of you are gonna laugh at me because you know that I have quite vivid dreams that are really weird. But I had a dream in 5th grade that I was sick the last week of school, and so I stayed home and did not complete my last assignment because I didn't know I had it because I was sick. And I went back to school and realized that since I didn't complete the assignment, Miss McCaig had given me an F, I guess, or had set a 0 for that grade, which lowered my A to a B. And I was devastated. And I told her, I said, Miss McCaig, please let me redo the assignment. I promise I'll do it. Please don't give me a B. And she said, no, you deserve the B. And remember, this is still out of my dream. I'm sorry. But I'm still going to finish it. So then I went to my parents in my dream still and said, she gave me a B for something I didn't deserve. I deserve an A. I at least deserve a chance. And my parents were like, no, you deserve the B. And everyone around me was telling me I deserved this B. I don't remember how the dream ended, but eventually I woke up. And I went to school and I told Mrs. McCaig this dream. And thinking that she was going to laugh at it with me and be like, oh, I would never do that to you. I would let you get the A. But what she said to me was, you know, Abigail, the best thing for you in your life right now would be to get a B. And that has always stuck with me. I'll never forget that story. I never will. Because what she was doing was showing me at a young age that grade is not what mattered. What mattered was how much I loved what I was learning and how much I pursued it. So they've always taught me to continue to love learning in that way, steered me away from grades, and that's just a fun story that I like to tell. Next, I think of my upper school science teachers, Miss Kane mostly, Miss Singh, and even Miss Ziegler as my math teacher this last year, who have all taught me to wonder and marvel at the beauty of God's creation. Whether that be in telling the age of a tree by looking at the rings in the trunk once it's been cut down, by finding the equivalent resistance across a circuit, or by wrestling with an integral in calculus, they have taught me to want to wonder and always pursue questions further than what is asked or required of me. And that's one part of classical education. They told me that there's beauty out there, and they told me to pursue it. And they taught us that. It's instilled in us now. I then think of Mr. Kane, Mrs. Letjohn, and Mr. Butler, who all gave us great works from history to read and delight in. They showed us that there's a continuity throughout all of humanity, that there are ancient pagan Greek philosophers and poets who delighted in literature and words and saw the grandeur of creation, the same way that Christians now will do. They showed us that there are things we can learn from these people, our ancient fathers, things to grow us into wiser people who appreciate the world of God and delight in it. Even in their paganness, there are things we can learn. There are things to be gleaned. Now I think of my parents. I really told myself I wasn't going to talk about them because I would just cry. I love them so much. From the day I was born, they've instilled in me this idea that classical education is worth pursuing, that goodness, truth, and beauty are worth pursuing, and that it's all worth pursuing under the Lordship of Jesus Christ. And that will never leave me, and I could not be more grateful for it. I then think of Mrs. Gray, who I was struggling to describe what she is to me. She was my basketball coach first and my math teacher. I'm not sure which one happened first there. Then she was my track coach, and she has grown to be really just a mentor and friend for me. She's always talked to me and tried to help bring me up into the person Christ has created me to be. Whenever I babysit her kids, even after she gets home, I'll stay for close to an hour sometimes afterwards just talking to her about whatever, any and everything. She always makes that effort to talk to me and to pour into me, to point me to Christ and help me be grateful for all that I have. So in the end, I just said a bunch of thank yous and a lot of details about those thank yous, which I said I didn't really want to do when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about. But I realized that all I can really say is that I'm grateful. What this speech was supposed to be is not some great dissertation or insightful expose on classical Christian education. I'm not even 18 years old yet. This is supposed to be a thank you to all those who helped me This is supposed to be a thank you to all those who have helped me get to the point I'm at today. Because even though we're young, we're inexperienced, we've reached a new stepping stone. We've graduated. We did it, you guys. We're here, and it's a big thing. We're ready to move on. God has matured us. He's made us ready for the next step. And in light of that, we look forward to the future with hope. But I think it's just as equally as important, that we look back to the past in gratitude. So as cheesy and as simple as thank you sounds and as stereotypical as I may think it is, that's really all I can say and all I wanted to say. So to everyone who's gotten me here,